the Jayda InStitches show and our parlor. It's May. I love May. And that means it's time for the next installment in our 2018 calendar blanket, a Victorian stitch sampler. This month we're going to learn the triangle trains stitch. This stitch has a really neat geometric look to it. Essentially, it's little triangles neatly linked together in a row, sort of like a bunch of triangular shaped train cars. We're going to be using the same hook size and the same type of yarn for this month's stitch as we have the rest of the blanket. If you want to work this stitch on its own, you can use a foundation chain row that's any multiple of 4 plus 2 chains on the end. We're going to be adding another 12.5 centimeters or 5 inches to the length of our blanket this month. So 9 rows of the stitch pattern is approximately 4 inches or 10 centimeters tall. And of course there's divider row, and every divider row is around 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch. The entire width of the blanket is still 40 inches or 100 centimeters. So that's where we're at in terms of the measurements. If you'd like a written copy of this month's crochet stitch guide, you'll find it for sale in our Etsy shop, and we'll put a link to our shop in the description box down below. So let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we will stitch up this month's triangle train stitch together. In order to add the next stitch to our calendar blanket, you're going to want approximately 100 grams of your stitch color, I'm using green this time, and a small amount of whatever color you're using for your divider row. All of my divider rows are this nice off-white color. You need a pair of scissors, a yarn needle. We're going to use the same hook that we've been using for the rest of this blanket. It's a 5.5 millimeter or an I-9. Make sure you have your blanket, and once you've got everything together, we can get started. We're going to begin with our divider row, so grab your divider row color. For me that's this off-white. We're going to make a slip knot. Pick up your blanket, and we're going to join our yarn in the very last stitch of the last row. So you've turned your work. We're joining with a slip stitch. So that's that very first stitch there. Chain 3. This chain 3 counts as a double crochet. You're going to skip 2 stitches. Let me get my little tail out of the way. Skip 2 stitches, find the third, and work 2 double crochet into it. And now for the rest of this row, you're just going to skip 2 stitches, find the third, and work 3 double crochets into it. So work 3 double crochets into every third stitch all the way across, and I'll catch up with you near the end. As you're nearing the end of the row and you get to your last 4 stitches, you're going to finish 3 double crochet, skip 2 stitches, work 2 double crochet in the second last stitch of this row, and then double crochet in the very last stitch. Count them all up. You should have 120 double crochets, that includes your chain 3 that began the row, in your divider row. And now you can snip your yarn, fasten off, and take a moment to weave in those 2 little short tails on the inside of those stitches. So this was the last stitch we worked for our divider row. I've woven in my little tail, I've flipped my blanket over, and now I'm ready to join my new stitch yarn in the top of that last double crochet I made in the previous row. So I'm going to grab my green yarn, going to make a slip knot, pick up my blanket, and join with a slip stitch in the top of that last stitch from the previous row. Chain 1 and single crochet into the same stitch that you joined your yarn in. So single crochet. There we go. Alright, this is an odd row, and this is what we do in an odd row. We chain 3, we skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, find the 4th, and single crochet into it. And that's it. Chain 3, skip 3, find the fourth, and single crochet into it. And that's all you have to do all the way across. Chain 3, skip 3, and single crochet into the very next stitch. You can work away at that, and I'll see you near the end. When you get all the way near the end, you're going to work your last chain 3, skip 3 stitches, find the top of the chain 3 from the previous row, and single crochet into it. That should work out perfectly, and you should have 29 chain 3 spaces. So count them up, make sure you've got 29 of them. Once you make sure you've got 29 of these chain 3 loops or spaces, we're going to chain 3, turn our work. Every even row begins with a chain 3, and every even row looks like this. We're going to work 3 double crochets into the same stitch as our chain 3. So into the same stitch, you're going to work 3 double crochets. Skip over top of the chain 3 space, find the next single crochet, which is that little anchor there, slip stitch into it, and then chain 3, and work 3 double crochets into it. And that is all you have to do across for row 2 and every even row of this pattern. Skip the chain 3 space, find the next single crochet, which is where it's anchored, slip stitch into it, and then chain 3, and begin your little triangle. 3 double crochets into the same space as the chain 3. Skip over the chain 3 space, find the next single crochet, slip stitch into it, chain 3, and then work 3 double crochet into the same stitch. And that is going to create our little train of triangles. It's really neat. They look like a bunch of little sort of sideways, little sideways shark fins almost. And that's all you have to do across. Just slip stitch into every single anchoring single crochet from the previous row, chain 3, work 3 double crochet into it, and you can do that all the way across. I'll catch up with you at the end. Once you've worked your interesting little triangle pattern all the way across, which is slip stitch into the single crochet, chain 3, and then 3 more double crochet into that same single crochet anchor from the previous row, get all the way to the end, work your last triangle, and then skip to the last single crochet, so the last little anchor, and you're just going to single crochet into it. So every even row, this was an even row, this was row 2, ends with a single crochet. It begins with a chain 3 and you start your triangle, and then when you work your way across you end with a single crochet in the last stitch. So it's sort of an off-kilter little pattern. So it starts with a chain 3 but it ends with a single crochet. Okay, all odd rows will now begin with a chain 6. So from here on out, every odd row begins with a chain 6. You can turn your work. But it's the same sort of concept as row 1. So row 3, all odd rows from here on out, chain 6 to begin. Find the top of the chain 3 of each triangle. So you skip over the whole triangle, find the top of the chain 3, and you're just going to single crochet into it. Chain 3, skip over the whole of the triangle, find the top of the chain 3 that began it, and single crochet into it. And that's all you have to do for every odd row here on out. Chain 3, skip over most of the triangle, find the top of the chain 3 that began it, and single crochet into the top of it. So lots of chain 3s here. You chain 3, find the next chain 3, single crochet into it, and so on. That's all you have to do. It should look something like that. And you can work your way across. I'll see you at the end of row 3.
you can just zoom your way right across row 3, working a single crochet in the top of every chain 3 that begins a triangle from the previous row, and make sure there's 3 chains in between, so lots of chain 3s here. Chain your last 3, find the last top of a triangle's chain 3 from the previous row, and that is how every odd row will end. It ends with a single crochet in the top of that chain 3 that begins the triangle. So the triangles are all going to sort of slant in one direction. So every odd row begins with a chain 6, and that's so we have this nice squaring off. So once we have the whole stitch pattern done, you'll see there's a nice squaring off, and every odd row will end with a single crochet in the top corner of that last triangle. Every even row begins with a chain 3. It's pretty similar to the same, every even row is the same, I should say. So chain 3 to begin, work 3 double crochet into the same stitch, because we're beginning a triangle right off the bat here. Oops. And then you just skip over to the next anchoring single crochet, slip stitch into it, don't forget that slip stitch, chain 3 and 3 double crochet into the same stitch. Work that all the way across. I'm just going to catch up with you at the end of row 4 just to show you which chain you're going to be single crocheting into to finish off these last few even rows, and then I'm going to turn you loose. Once you've worked your little triangles all the way across and you get back to that big chain 6 that starts the odd rows, you can count from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, or count from the end of the row, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 from the end of the row or 3 from the bottom, whichever you find is the easiest way to count. Find that chain and single crochet into it. And there you go. You are going to repeat odd row, even row, odd row, even row, or the row 3, row 4. So chain 6 to begin every odd row, and chain 3 to begin every even row. Remember, every even row, which is a triangle row, ends with a single crochet in that 4th chain across or the 3rd chain up, depending on how you want to look at it. And every odd row begins with a single crochet in the sort of, it begins with, I should say, 6 chains and ends with a single crochet in the top of the last triangle. So off you go. You're going to work this repeating pattern until you get to the end of row 9, and I will hook up with you then. I've worked 9 rows of the pattern, so I've snipped my yarn and I'm going to fasten off. My sample is 4 inches or 10 centimeters tall, and the width of the blanket is 40 inches or 100 centimeters wide. You can continue to work the pattern by repeating rows 3 and 4, 3 and 4, but you want to make sure you end on a row 3, sort of the odd row, because that's how the pattern needs to finish. But 9 rows is enough for me, and if you notice any sort of leaning to one side or the other, that's typical with this pattern because it's a slightly off-kilter pattern. Don't worry, that leaning will disappear once we add our border, and certainly after we block our blanket when we're all finished. But there you have it. That is triangle trains. Choo-choo.
And that is the rather geometric triangle trains stitch. Pretty neat, eh? We were excited that so many of you popped over to our website last week to check out our latest free pattern, Bob the Minion, and thank you to all of you who popped into our tip jar while you were there to leave us a tip. We really appreciate your support of our show and everything that we do here. I hope you enjoyed working on this month's stitch along with me, and we will see you here soon on the Jayda and Stitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have a wonderful week, everyone. Bye!